Hi, I'm Maria Theoharis of Fellow Sews on social media. Welcome back to Sew 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. Grab a cuppa and relax with us. Are you ready for the 3 big things that I'm going to be announcing today? Before I start, a big thank you to everyone who listens to my podcast. Whether you've just found it or were a listener at the beginning and you moved on in life. Your listening to my podcast has kept me producing these every week since August 2019. Thank you to the current and past podcast patron supporters. It was through your asking me, where can we support you, that I created the podcast Patreon account. It's on patreon.com and you can find it at Sew Organised Style podcast. That's organised with an S. So becoming a Patreon supporter is available for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. I've also built a few other groups to have monthly meetings to either fix clothes, work on unfinished projects, or even to develop short form videos. These are the kind of things that I can do, and I'm more than happy to. If people are interested, then we can do these each month for a small fee. Okay, big announcement number 1. Now, going back to the podcast, I've published over 440 episodes now. Have you ever wondered what were the top episodes? More importantly, what were the top 20 episodes, seeing as though there were 440 of them so far? At the start of August each week, I'll be publishing the countdown to the top 20 episodes with a retrospective introduction so you can find each guest. You'll of course be able to find their Instagram accounts and more importantly see how these guests were contributing to the sewing community at the time and how they've continued to do so. That's an important part of why I've continued to develop Sew Organised Style podcast as a podcast that is about people in the sewing community. They're building community. We're building safe spaces to be friends when many of us are introverts who love sewing and are happy to create and imagine textiles of how they'll look as either clothes for themselves or for their families and friends. While you're listening to the top 20 countdown, I'll be working in the background to create the podcast with the guests that many of you nominated last month. There were so many nominations that you suggested over the last 3 weeks that I'm going to make sure that I do the research to ensure that I get them on the podcast. Now, it takes at least an hour of editing to produce 10 minutes of what you hear on a podcast. And it also takes a good day or two to contact the person, arrange for the recording, and make sure that they have blog posts that have information up there, etc. So why am I telling you this? I'm a one-person independent podcaster. Since completing my diploma in screen and media and judging the Australian Podcast Awards, the British Podcast Awards, and the Independent Podcasts Awards, I know that podcasts are easy to do. They're easy to create. But to do it at industry standard, you have to have the resources all the time to get it done right. So thank you for all of your guest suggestions that I've received. And I'm now putting the time into setting up these episodes so that they're inspiring, engaging, and a great listening experience. Announcement number 2. Here's another project that I'm working on while the top 20 countdown continues from August onwards. There are many of us who get frustrated trying to use their device without needing to ask help from others. Since I've been developing short-form tutorials on Instagram, on my personal account, which is Velo Sews, and on Sew Organised Style podcast, I've been asked to develop skill-building tutorials so we can stay connected with our online sewing friends, and we do this by using the devices that we own. The aim of these tutorials is to help people be more self-reliant with their technology and apps on their device. Here's a question for you. What app or device do you want to be able to use better? We've already touched on some of these topics through the podcast under the Protect Your Account series, and I'll bring that series to the top of the podcast website. What these skill tutorials aim to do is to help you become proficient in using your devices. We'll start with building your skills so that you can then help others build their skills as well. While I'm passing on these skills through the tutorials, you'll be able to share these skills with others as well. Is there something you're interested in learning about? If there is, send me a message on the podcast social media accounts or email me at seworganisedstyle@gmail.com. That's organised with an S, not a Z. Oh, before I forget, going back to the top 20 countdown, I have a couple of podcast recordings that are going to be published in September. So there will be some new podcasts published while the top 20 countdown rocks on. I know, that's a lot to take in. Here's the final announcement. Number 3, now for the really fun celebration ahead. On the 18th of August, Sew 50 turns 6 years old. That's not the only milestone that Sew 50 is achieving on Instagram. By that stage, they'll have 50,000 followers too. So happy birthday to Sew 50 on Instagram. Judith Staley created Sew 50 and Sandy Back is her editor-in-chief with a global team of social media editors. Keep an eye out on the Sew 50 account and join the celebrations ahead. Many thanks to you for listening, for staying in touch, and for being supportive of my creating Sew Organised Style podcast for 5 years now. And before I finish, I've created an account on Instagram called Everything Froctals. I'm not developing events, but the event committees who are developing froctals in their local areas, I'm making sure that I help promote their froctals so that you can find one in your local area. My key takeaway for anyone who is buying tickets for froctals is to buy the ticket from the organiser themselves. We've noticed that there are some scams going around, so if you're interested in attending a froctals event, buy your ticket from the organiser and help support them. Thanks for listening. This episode of Sew 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, sound by bensound.com. Many thanks for the ongoing support of the podcast Patreon contributors. It's their support that enables me to develop these podcasts for you for free, and I hope you'll join them. You can subscribe to Sew Organised Style podcast with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Sew 50 archive on Sew Organised Style podcasts. If you want to contribute posts and challenges on the Sew 50 account on Instagram, make sure you direct message Sandy and the editors, because that group is going to be 50,000 followers and more. I hope that you'll support them. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.